CNN. They like to talk about how Infowars is fake news, and in the spirit of the video I put out on my main channel over at youtube.com/timcast, where the video is titled something like, "If we're going to ban fake news, let's start with CNN," because there's been a series of posts by Oliver Darcy questioning certain posts by Infowars, wondering why Facebook doesn't take action against the fake news. And so my argument is, if we say that Infowars should be taken down for posting fake news, then what's the threshold? Like, is there a threshold for how much fake news you can post? Because if that's the case, CNN should be taken down too. And that's what I have pulled up right here on Wikipedia, CNN controversies. Because CNN has put out a ton of totally absurd fake news, and they do it all the time. Do I think everything CNN does is fake news? No, of course not. Do I think Infowars is a fantastic source of information? For the most part, no, I don't. Alex Jones said there was going to be a civil war on the 4th. There wasn't. Of course there wasn't. But I will admit, saying there's going to be a civil war is at least based in reality. Because a civil war can happen. Is it likely to? No, absolutely not. And I would not recommend anybody place a bet saying it would. However, when Don Lemon went on CNN and said a black hole could swallow an airplane and had his guests entertain the idea, that's not based in reality. So yes, in this instance, Infowars better than CNN. Right? And so the argument then is, if CNN is going to say that because Alex Jones asked about whether or not, this Kamsky kid from Parkland is a child actor, which, yes, he was a drama student, and how David Hogg has been seen, there's like photos of him at CNN, because these are charismatic, people, he's asking whether or not those who are anti-gun are using child actors to push the narrative. Granted, Alex Jones has said some crazy stuff. He said the probability, there's one Facebook post that the probability that Parkland was a false flag was like 90%. I'm not saying the guy's a great source of information, but he's allowed to opine. He's allowed to think what he wants to think. And saying that these kids are child actors and, they're charismatic personalities, okay, I get it. You don't gotta agree with them. You can think the dude's nuts, but at least that's reality. False flags, they happen. I think they're very unlikely in most circumstances. Conspiracy theorists kind of go nuts. But Don Lemon also said it was very easy to buy automatic weapons. Factually inaccurate. I was in Ferguson. He said there was no tear gas. Factually inaccurate. So how many times can CNN be wrong? And how many times can Infowars say things that are opinions that are probably not true? There's a difference here, right? So let's take a look at this here list of CNN controversies. A lot of these I've never read through and I don't know a lot about. So let's scroll down. CNN has often been the subject of allegations of party bias. In research conducted by the Shorstein Center on Media, Politics, and Public Policy at Harvard University and the Project for Excellence in Journalism, the authors found disparate treatment by three major cable networks of Republican and Democrat candidates during the earliest 5 months of the presidential primaries in 2007. The CNN programming study tended to cast a negative light on Republican candidates by a margin of 3-1. 4 in 10 stories were clearly negative, while 14% were positive and 46% were neutral. The network provided negative coverage of all 3 main candidates, with McCain faring the worst, 63% negative, and Romney faring a little better than the others only because a majority of his coverage was neutral, with the exception of Obama. Democrats tended not to fare well either. Nearly half of the Illinois senators' stories were positive, versus just 8% that were negative. But both Clinton and Edwards ended up with more negative than positive coverage overall, while Democrats on average tended to have more positive coverage. The trend was skewed by particularly positive coverage for Obama, who won, by the way. So a lot of people point out that Time Warner is a big contributor to the Clintons, and if you're going to take this as fact, they haven't been too good with Clinton, though the 2016 thing, that's a whole other story because everybody was on Clinton's side. I don't want to read like let's not read through that. Let's see. Okay, here's a good one. Here's some fake news. CNN apologized for a May 15, 2003 story in which CNN's John Zarella and Broward County, Florida Sheriff Ken Jean demonstrated the rapid firing of fully automatic firearms while covering the federal assault weapons ban due to expire the following year. The assault weapons ban was concerned solely with semi-automatic firearms, not fully automatic ones, which had already been restricted by the National Firearms Act of 1934 and the subsequent 1986 Firearm Owners Protections Act. Well, there you go, CNN. Well, there's our first bit of fake news, and this is Wikipedia aggregating this stuff. Don't ask me. Let's see here. So they got the WikiLeaks emails. So here's some fake news. During live coverage of the 2016 election, CNN anchor Chris Cuomo said that downloading the hacked and stolen Podesta emails from the WikiLeaks website was a violation of law and that only the media could legally do so. The statement drew criticism to the network for being false. So when Chris Cuomo said that, should we then say CNN should be banned for propagating false news? I also, maybe they did, I don't know, but I don't recall them apologizing for putting out that false statement. I also don't recall Don Lemon apologizing for suggesting that a black hole may have swallowed an airplane, which he probably should never have said in the first place, and it is on par with some of the most insane and ridiculous conspiracy nonsense. So I don't want to read through the Trump administration coverage, but actually let me just say this, right? So there's Occupy CNN protests. People were mad that Bernie Sanders wasn't getting coverage. They say CNN is biased. The WikiLeaks emails, we know that Donna Brazile was passing questions for the Clinton campaign. So there's a lot of things that CNN has done that's been questionable, but I want to make sure we focus on the fake news stuff. Oh, not entirely fake news. There's some other stuff I want to talk about. Coverage on international incidents. During the Persian Gulf War, CNN was criticized for excessively pushing human interest stories and avoiding depictions of violent images, the result of all this being an alleged propagandistic presentation of news. A report by Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting quotes an unnamed CNN reporter as describing the sweet, beautiful sight of bombers taking off from Saudi Arabia. Okay, so there's some more bias. They were criticized for unusual absence of live coverage of a large set of protests in Iran. Interesting. Let's see, coverage of Margaret Thatcher's death, whatever. Conflict with the Venezuelan government, unsurprising. Let's see, Operation Tailwind. Oh, this is actually really interesting here. So in 1998, CNN, in partnership with sister Time magazine, ran a report that Operation Tailwind in 1970 in Vietnam involved the use of sarin gas to kill a group of defectors from the United States military. That's insane. The Pentagon denied the story. Skeptics deemed it improbable that such an extraordinary and risky atrocity could have gone unnoticed at the height of the Vietnam War's unpopularity. CNN, after a 2-week inquiry, issued a retraction. The story's producers were summarily fired, and one of them has been highly critical of CNN's handling of the story, saying that the network bowed to pressure from high-ranking officials to kill the story, which gives us two potential scenarios. CNN published fake news and was forced to retract, and that's a crazy story. The use of sarin gas to kill U.S. military defectors, or that CNN bowed down to the government and retracted a story that was actually true. Either way, their credibility gets shot in the whole issue. Suppression of Bahraini protests and reporting of Iran and Syria. Now this one, we get into the territory of a little personal stuff because I actually know Amber Lyon, and when she was giving out information on this stuff, I was actually behind the scenes hearing about what happened, so I take issue with a lot of the reporting. But according to Amber, she met with Tony Maddox, president of CNN International, twice about a documentary on advances of democracy in the Middle East in which she was featured, and which was aired in the US but never by CNN International, the most watched English news channel in the Middle East. Despite a high production cost, international acclaim, and awards, she claimed that during the second meeting she was threatened and intimidated to stop speaking on the matter. According to a CNN employee, officials from the Bahrain regime called CNN constantly complaining about Lyon's participation in the network. She was later laid off. Let me clarify this. She was laid off because CNN got rid of their investigative unit. That was it, okay? It was, apparently, she told me that they offered her a different position and to reapply, and she didn't want to do it. I also know that it's been several years, look, this was 6 or so years ago, but she played for me the phone call, the secret recording with Tony Maddox, and I'm pretty sure he said that it was a business decision, that they had already aired segments of her report on CNN International, and that they were deciding what to air and what not to air based on business practices. Whether or not you want to believe them is entirely up to you. Personally, I felt like the framing of this whole issue was very, very lopsided and painted CNN in a very biased and negative light. I don't like CNN. You don't gotta say it. You don't gotta ask me. I'll tell you straight up. But I feel like it was always very extreme. Not only was she laid off, but she got, I think, like a 10-month severance or something to that effect. And Glenn Greenwald did a very favorable piece, which is also very misleading. The whole thing it leaves a sour taste in my mouth. What I can say is that the reporting about, the CNN officials saying the Bahrain regime called CNN, so I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I think it's very favorable to Lyon and very critical of CNN, but CNN worthy of criticism. I think it went a little far. But let's carry on to the few cases of very extreme instances that I really want to talk about. Like the time Reza Aslan cannibalized Okay, all right, I'll tone it down a little bit. Like the time Reza Aslan ate human brains on TV. I'm not kidding. There it is on the screen. Reza Aslan in 2017 in his documentary titled Believer. In the first episode was criticized after Reza Aslan ate human brains with members of the fringe Agori sect of Hinduism. This was criticized in India for misrepresenting Indian religious traditions, as well as potentially stirring up racism and xenophobia against Americans of Indian origin. And they talk about how, Indian Political Action Committee said, some stuff. Can I just point out that, look, I understand if you think it misrepresents your religion, but can we just talk about how a CNN presenter literally ate human brains on TV? And I was talking to a friend of mine, and I said, someone who actually knew Reza, actually. And I said that this makes him a cannibal. And they said, absolutely not. It was just like a one-time thing. And I'm like, that's interesting. A cannibal is somebody who eats other people of the same species. It's like cannibalism. And the question then became, at what point does someone become a thing by taking an action? So, like, if you murder someone, are you a murderer? Yes. You're not a serial killer. But if you eat human brains, are you a cannibal? It's hard. Like, typically when someone says cannibal, they're implying that you like regularly do it. And it's like doing it one time. Does it mean he's gonna do it again? I don't think so. But the dude literally ate human brain. So I'll leave that one up to you guys. I'm not gonna overtly say he is a cannibal, but what I will say is Reza Aslan ate human brains. There you go. What else do you want me to say? Don Lemon held up a Confederate flag with a sign of the N-word on it. Oh God, you know what? I think this is too long. This is too long for even me to read through. Redditor controversy. Oh yeah, here's another crazy instance where CNN tracked down a Reddit user, some random guy who made a meme. And apparently, in the article, political reporter Andrew Kaczynski explained the process that allowed the organization to discover the truth and identify the user. But I believe what was actually happening, so it says, prominent alt-right users on social media subsequently accused CNN of blackmailing the user using a hashtag CNN blackmail. That was heavily pushed by Julian Assange, as well as various right-wing online activists and conspiracy theorists. Kaczynski responded by stating that CNN's statement was misinterpreted. Basically what happened was, they said, CNN stated that they would not reveal his name as he was a private citizen who has issued an extensive statement of apology, showed his remorse by saying he has taken down all offending posts, and because he said he is not going to repeat this ugly behavior on social media again. In addition, he said his statement could serve as an example to others not to do the same. CNN reserves the right to publish his identity should any of that change. CNN said, because they agree with his actions, because he's taking the post down, they're not going to publish his identity. That's blackmail. I'm sorry. That is. In what regard is it okay to tell someone, okay, if you do the right thing, I won't publish your information? It's not. CNN could have just said, this is the person, here's what he did. Or they could have said, we're not going to reveal his identity. Instead, they said, they reserve the right to publish his identity if any of his behavior changed. You know what? I think I've gone through this list enough. I'm a bit exhausted, and I got a lot of work to do. So thanks for hanging out. CNN, they're pretty bad. Nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. No one anywhere ever. And I think CNN, most of what they do is fine. A lot of the reporting is like very run-of-the-mill and average. But then they do have these controversies. And the only thing I really want to point out is that people who live in glass houses should not throw stones. So anyway, thanks for hanging out. I'm beat. I'm going to get out of here. I'll see you guys tomorrow.